it definitely changed my perspective where I thought, wow, I can have such a better attitude about this. I'm going to be doing it either way, so I might as well have some fun and see the positive in it.
Welcome to Mindset Lessons from the Field. I'm Gina Kazaz, the author of the upcoming memoir, Training with a SEAL, and today is one of our bonus episodes that I am extremely excited about because we're going to be talking to one of my teammates from my time in Team Eagle One. And I just want to get right into this episode. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Cole Sanders. Cole, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Gina. It's a privilege to be here with you.
I am beyond excited. You are the first person that I am actually talking to from my time at Team Eagle One. And I just want to get into it. Let me just go ahead and start asking you. First of all, we all need to know, what made you join Team Eagle One?
I wanted to become a SEAL, and that was something that I wanted to do since around high school. And I remember for a few years after high school, I just told myself that it was too hard, that it was something that was not possible. It was just too big of a goal to have. And I found out about Team Eagle One, and I decided that I would give it a try just to see what is possible and to see if that's something that I could do.
So when exactly did you join, and how long were you in the program for?
Let's see. I joined, what year was that? What year did you start?
I believe it was 2021. Okay. I joined March of 2021.
Okay. I think I started about a month or two before you did at Team Eagle. Yeah, I ended up doing it for 9 months in person. It was really hard to make it to all of the trainings because I ended up being like 8 hours each way. I'm from up by Tahoe, so every weekend when I was starting, it was every weekend that I'd drive down, which was really hard. And then I ended up dropping down to just every other weekend for a long time.
I remember I heard that. I was just like, oh my gosh, this guy drove a crazy amount to get here. I was like, that's serious dedication, because I don't know about you, but I mean, you were very committed. And I had to convince myself every morning to get in my car and drive there because it was torture for me. It was really, really the hardest thing I ever done physically, mentally, emotionally. So I just remember the night before, I struggled to even sleep. And then when I was ready to go, I knew I had to leave by 7:45. And there was no leaving earlier than that, because each moment I was like, maybe my stomach's hurting. Maybe I think I have a headache coming on. It's raining out. How did you commit and go? Did you have any feelings like I had where you just anything that's similar, or it's just me?
Yeah, no, completely similar. I had just a feeling of dread for a long time. The entire time driving, I was just thinking about how hard it's going to be, and thinking about all the challenging things that we did the previous weekend or the weekend before. Yeah, definitely psyched myself out a lot, to the point where in the mornings before Team Eagle One, I would get up and I'd go to the McDonald's on my way on the last leg of the trip there. And I just couldn't eat because I was so nervous every single morning before Team Eagle One. I'd have to force myself to eat, and I still could never eat enough to provide the calories that we needed for all the exercise we were doing.
Oh my God, I'm so glad I wasn't the only one. I remember I threw up one morning because in the middle of training, because I couldn't eat, and it's so physically demanding that you have to eat prior. But my stomach, I was so every single time I was just so nervous because I just knew this is so hard. This is so hard. You were so good. I'm shocked that you joined. I thought you were there for a long time. I didn't know it was a month before I started. I remember watching you and I was just like, oh my gosh, this guy's a beast. Did you, prior to any of this, train at all before going into this?
I did a little bit, yeah. I had already been on a training schedule for running, so I was in shape with my cardio and my running. I didn't do a lot of preparation for the push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, and I really had a hard time with those starting out. But as you know, once you're going to Team Eagle One on a regular basis, you just have to improve. You just can't not improve with all the effort that you're putting in.
100%. Did you train to like during the week and everything as well?
Yeah. Once I really got into the rhythm of Team Eagle One and I got my white shirt, I was working out like 2 to 3 hours most days in the gym, and then I'd run for about an hour. I think that was about my normal schedule. I'd end up not working out, like taking a day of full rest, 1 day a week. So
now, you mentioned white shirt. Can you tell our audience exactly what that is and how long it took you to get that white shirt?
Yeah, I think it took me, 3 months before I was able to earn my white shirt. And it's been a while now. I don't remember the exact requirements of that, but I remember, a 1.5 mile run in under a certain amount of time. I think it was 9 minutes. And then we'd go right into push-ups, pull-ups, and sit-ups. And there was a certain amount in 2 minutes for the push-ups and the sit-ups. And I think the push-ups were, I want to say 80, and the sit-ups I think also were 80. And then pull-ups a minimum of 10, as long as you didn't drop off the bar and you had good form. And with everything that we did, it was always you have to do it in perfect form or it doesn't count, which is the first time that I'd encountered that, which made it a lot more difficult too, because I had been doing push-ups for a long time, but I was not doing them with perfect form where your chest goes within a certain distance up the ground and all that.
From what I remember, when you get your white shirt, you have to maintain it. It's not like you get it and then you have it forever until you move up to, I think it was like blue or brown or something. Do you remember when you get your white shirt? Is it like it's a monthly test or something, correct?
I think so. I think it was every few weekends Coach Mack would do the white shirt test, and you had to pass it every single time to continue wearing your white shirt. You had to earn it every single time. And another thing he did was when you had a white shirt, you didn't get breaks in between. The other guys that weren't white shirts, they would get to take a second to breathe while the white shirts hopped into whatever was next, the push-ups or the sit-ups. But if you were a white shirt, then you went straight from the run directly into doing the sit-ups or the push-ups, which made it a lot.
During the test, you mean?
Yeah, during the test.
Gotcha. And did you maintain that the whole entire time that you were there? Like once you got that white shirt, you stayed with your white shirt?
I did, yeah. Yeah.
That's impressive. Wow. That's really impressive. Did you go Tuesdays as well, or was it just the weekends that you went?
Only the weekends. I went to 1 or 2 Tuesday practices ever, just because I was never down in LA besides just for Team Eagle One. Yeah, I did go to one of the trainings on Tuesdays, which were much easier.
I love Tuesdays. Yeah.
Yeah, it was actually enjoyable to me.
Yeah, I was a big fan of Tuesdays because I feel like after Sunday, it was like, what a nice break. But it was all about form. Like it was like making sure everything was in perfect form and everything. So it was just nice. I didn't feel like we ran a lot, which was like, oh my God, I've never ran so much in my life. How was it the first time you went to Team Eagle One? Like, do you remember the first time that you experienced it and like what was going through your mind the whole entire time during that training? Did you want to quit at all? Were you like, what made you come back? Like, walk me through this. I need to get into the mind of someone that's not me.
Yeah. So I do remember the first day of Team Eagle One pretty well. I remember, number one, how I felt, which was just like I got kicked in the stomach. Like I was nauseous. Yeah, I just couldn't believe the physical output that was demanded of us and that these people were doing it. I'd never seen or met a group of people that were that hard working and exercising and pushing themselves. And I was just so impressed. And I didn't really think about quitting like as an option. I thought of it like my body wanted to. Like I would have much rather just not been doing that hard of exercise, but
Yeah.
um, I was just happy to be a part of it. I remember by the end of it, it was by far the hardest I'd ever worked out. And I thought that was it. And we had lined up on the beach facing the waves. And I thought that Coach Mack was going to talk to us and like tell us good job and then send us home, which was not the case. We were then going to go for an ocean swim, and I couldn't believe it. He actually didn't end up letting me going. I guess they don't let you do ocean swims on your first few times, which I'm thankful for, because at that point I was having trouble seeing and hearing. Everything was super bright and I couldn't hear anything very well. So I really had to pay attention to what he was saying, just because I had exerted myself so hard that I was bonking.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a crazy experience the first time.
Did you ever do an ocean swim?
I did, yeah, but later on. And I always found those very difficult. The swimming was probably my biggest difficulty with Team Eagle One, because I have no place to train while swimming in waves. I can train in the pool, but we don't have the ocean anywhere close to where I'm at. So
what were the swims like? Because I never experienced a swim. The only thing I experienced was and I'm sure you remember, maybe not, but I don't know how you can forget. I've been terrified of the water. So most of the time I was in tears as we were laying down in the swell doing those sit-ups and push-ups. And then when we had to I remember one time we had to do the pivot point, where we had to go around the pivot point, and there was just a point where I couldn't stand and I just dropped and the waves were coming at it. I panicked. Someone, I think it was Dober, grabbed me and helped me, and I'm just it was terrifying for me. So for you, talk me through how far you had to swim, the experience, all that stuff.
I was also not very comfortable in the water at first, but after a few times, and swimming with the group helped me a lot too.
It was a buddy thing, right? Or was it was just you and someone else that you had to stay with? Or
it was a buddy system. And
okay.
It was, you tried to get a buddy that was about the same speed and strength of swimmer as you. And I was always in the back. But the distance wise, I'm not sure. I know that we would swim from the shore out to the buoys and we do a few laps. It was a few times that I did the ocean swims, but I do remember vividly one swim where Coach Mack told us to swim parallel to a building way down the beach. And I think we figured out later it was a total of 4-mile swim or something. But he ended up calling us back. Coach Mack ended up leaving, and his assistant, we saw him on the beach and he was telling us to turn back around because it was just getting too late. It was taking us too long. But yeah, that was always a very challenging aspect of the training, but very rewarding too. I think that was the best feeling, was after swimming and getting out of the water for me was just such a relief. Man, I did that.
Today's episode is sponsored by my favorite jewelry company, Omnia. Omnia blends genuine crystals with cutting-edge NFC technology to create the world's first smart crystal bracelet. This bracelet connects to the Elevate web application, giving you a membership to over 200 self-care resources, from meditations to journals to breathing exercises and so much more. Visit discoveromnia.com and use code MindsetPodcast for 40% off. DiscoverOmnia.com, your key to wellness. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the whole feeling of accomplishment. Like you said, it was the most challenging physical thing that you've done, and the improvement that you went through. Did you notice it right away on how? Because when I saw you, I thought you were seasoned, because I'm just knowing for the first time that you've only been there for a month before me, and you were always in the front. I just always was looking at those guys in the front and was how the heck do you guys do that? So talk to me about that feeling of accomplishment as you were progressing, and was that what made you come back, or was it? Talk to me more about that.
I think what made me come back was that I just didn't want to quit. I just wanted to see what I could accomplish. And I felt immediately, as soon as joining Team Eagle One, that I didn't want to let anyone else on the team down. That was always a really big motivator for me. On days that I didn't want to go to the gym or I didn't want to run or didn't want to train, I would make myself because I didn't want to let any of the other guys down. And I knew that it would show on the next weekend if I showed up for training, that people would notice and I would notice. I was always focused on keeping up with the one guy in front of me, which was Alec. And that was always a challenge. I could never catch him in most of the stuff, but that was a fun game.
Did you feel it? Like, I always wondered. I always needed to know, like, because for me, the runs, I'm not a runner. And so I was always like, is this not painful for you guys? And the crazy part was, I remember the first time when I joined and we did that warm-up run, that's a race. And I was like, it's a warm-up. Why is a warm-up a race? And I'm just so confused. And that's how we started every time, was like this warm-up race that was like a mile long. And you guys just put out every time. And then you guys just got faster and faster. And I was like, how are you guys doing? Are you not in pain?
Yeah, I was definitely in pain. I would feel it in my lungs because I also have like exercise asthma, not diagnosed, but there'll get to be a point where I just can't breathe anymore. I started to feel that most days that I'd be running at Team Eagle One, and I could taste after trainings, I would like be hacking up stuff, and it would taste metallic, like blood.
Yeah,
it was uncomfortable, but I think it was always worth the rewarding feeling afterwards.
How did you push through? What was going through your mindset during this time?
When I wanted to quit and slow down, if I was at that point, then I would just tell myself to keep that pace, and I would count until I would lose track of what number I was on. Like, I'd count to 200 with each step, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I'd start over. And that helped to keep my mind off of the discomfort that I was feeling. And besides that, it helped because I was almost always behind Alec. He was almost always faster than me. It helped me to focus on matching his pace. And that would be my goal if I was starting to slow down or able to keep up. My only goal would be to match his pace and follow his footsteps and try and keep that pace. So I'd just set that as my goal and focus on that for that run.
Now, when we were doing sit-ups and push-ups and flutter kicks and stuff, you mentioned in the very beginning of this interview that, you know, that was something that you struggled with in the beginning. When we were in push-up position and sometimes we just had to like stay there, or like flutter kicks, and sometimes we just had to have our feet up. And for me, it was very painful. And how did you push through the pain to not quit?
I would think of how embarrassed I would be, or how I would be letting down my teammates if I didn't hold that position. And that was always a super good motivator for me. Sometimes if I was training on my own, I would let down that position just when it would get too hard. But it was always a big help to be around the other people that were working out so hard. And I just had so much respect for them. I didn't want to let anyone down. So I would hold it until failure most of the time.
No, you mentioned in the beginning too, like that you were nervous going to training and you knew like each week it was just hard. Was there any point in those 9 months where like that went away?
That's a good question. And I had the same question when I joined, like, will this get more comfortable? And for me, it did not. I was always very nervous, very stressed out about it. But I also found that stress helped me to stay on track, to stay training, and to keep it seriously, or take it seriously. I think that the stress was good. I think it pushed me a little bit also.
It became a motivator for you, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So when we were in Team Eagle One together, for me, I took a lot of lessons that came out of it. There was a lot of lessons that I learned. Like, I remember the reason why I ended up coming back the second day. It was only supposed to be 1 day for me. I just was testing out my strength, to see if I lasted. And then Coach Mac was like, if you think day one is hard, well, try day two, because your mind is going to give you every logical excuse to not show up. So my whole entire life, I've been taught day one's the hardest and it gets easier. And he was like, 100% no. He's like, day two is even harder than day one, because now you know how much pain you're going to be in, and your brain is just going to give you and he mentioned, which I thought was really important, a logical excuse. Like every single excuse is completely logical. And for me, it was like, you're not training to be a Navy SEAL. You're not even in the military. Like there were so many logical excuses that made me not want to go. But the whole reason I joined was to test my mindset. So if day one is hard, and day two is going to be harder, I got to come back to at least experience that. And that's how I ended up continuing. So did you take any of those lessons or learn any lessons that you were like, oh my gosh, like kind of like an aha moment for you?
I did. Yeah. I also had the same thing where after day one, I knew the pain that I would face the next time.
How was your body, by the way? I'm going to cut you off, but like, was your body like my body went into shock. Like it couldn't walk for 4 days. I almost went to the hospital. Like, did your body like freak out for a little bit?
It did. Yeah. That was probably the most muscle soreness I've ever had, was after the first day. Cause I mean, I had been doing some push-ups and pull-ups, sit-ups and running, but not crawling through sand and doing races on sand and body carries or whatever else we did. It would be very hard to prepare for Team Eagle 1 to a point that you wouldn't be sore. And I was very sore for the entire next week. I think I was still a little bit sore when I came back to the next Sunday.
100%. Yeah. So sorry, let's get back to, I just had to interrupt that one real quick on the lessons that you like learned from this experience.
Coach Mack did a really good job of also teaching us tools to deal with that kind of stuff, like looking forward to the feeling of finishing the evolution. Like that was something that I found really useful, was during Team Eagle 1 practices, just dreading the next exercise or just being in pain and being miserable. And it helped me so much just to think of how great I would feel after practice and the sense of accomplishment that I would feel after I finished that evolution and did it. And you're talking about where you go back the next time, you dread it so much more because you know the pain that you're going to face. And I felt that every single time. And you were asking about if it gets easier. That's one thing that did get easier for me. At a certain point, like a few months in, I would just get into a headspace where I wouldn't think about it as much. And although I would be super stressed and nervous and nauseous, I found it to be a lot more doable, a lot more palatable than towards the beginning of starting training with Team Eagle 1.
Everything in my actual life did feel like way easier, like for myself. Yeah. Like when things popped up that might have been difficult prior, and I'm not just talking like physical. I mean, like, you know, things, just life in general can be hard. And when you go through hard stuff, it just makes it easier, where you're just like, oh, you know, like I was in Europe recently and it was a bit cold, but I remembered when I slept on the ground in like 37-degree weather with just a jacket with that SEER experience. And then you realize like, oh, I could get through that. I could get through this. You know, if I could get through the whole, I'm terrified of the ocean and yet I have to do this stuff. And the thing is, when he says jump, you say how high. Like you don't think when he's like running the water and it's freezing. Now you were there prior to me joining, and that was March in the Pacific Ocean. You're there in February. How cold was it for you?
It was just always cold.
It was always
it just cold. Didn't register how cold because I was so just nervous and like in the moment, adrenaline. It just always felt so cold to me.
Especially on a Tuesday with no sun and it was just dark. I was just like, oh my gosh, like I had goosebumps like all the time. No matter how much running we did, I was just freezing. And I think for me, like, I want to know for you, for me, the hardest was when we were wet and covered in sand and had to run on dry sand. I didn't realize how heavy my clothes would be and how uncomfortable I would be with sand everywhere. What was the hardest thing for you?
Yeah, I had that difficulty too. And I think that was one of the most difficult parts was once we got wet and sandy. I don't know how much weight it actually added, but it felt like so much. Like my boots would be full of water.
Yeah.
Cargo pants they felt like 20 pounds heavier. And then the soft sand, you don't get as much energy moving forward as you would on hard ground, obviously, but you notice it so much more when you're weighted down. And especially when you're doing sprint races back and forth multiple times. Yeah, that was definitely one of the most difficult evolutions for me, I think.
From the very beginning, it clicked with you on teammate. So did you come into this prior, like from an athletic background where you were on teams and developed that teammate? Like, how did that come into play?
That's a good question. I do have a background in sports. I played 5 sports in high school. And then after high school, I coached for a year. I was an assistant coach for cross country, but it never clicked. Like the teammate thing never clicked with me until Team Eagle won. And I think the difference was the output and the effort coming from everyone and the amount of respect I had for everyone. Yeah, that's when I just really didn't want to let everyone or anyone down. It was a really cool feeling.
It was really cool to be surrounded by such, like, as Coach Max says, like hard chargers. It's insane because you're not surrounded by these types of people, these high achievers all the time, you know, and to not quit and to stick with it and go week after week. It's like, for me personally, there was like this bond that suddenly formed after showing up every couple of weeks. After my first month being there, it just kind of clicked, like this bond. And it was like unlike anything I've ever really experienced before. And you have so much respect for each other. And the one thing, everyone's doing the hard stuff. Like it's all hard for everybody. It all sucks for everybody. And the fact that you show up each time to get your ass kicked is like super impressive. I wasn't so much in my head as I was the first week or two when I was I was always slow the whole entire time. But the first 2 weeks, I think I was more in my head on like, oh my gosh, like I'm terrible. Like this dog is walking faster than I'm running right now. And I was so embarrassed. Like for me, my brother said to me, you should have a shirt that says, don't worry, I'm not protecting and serving you. He's like, because everyone sees you last and it's embarrassing. But I just remember just being like, that suddenly went away after week 3 because I was just like, there's just a more respect from the fact that like we're showing up for each other.
From my perspective, those are the people that I had the most respect for. I mean, I had a lot of respect for the people in the front because they put in a lot of effort, but the things that really stood out to me were the people in the back and how they just would not quit. The people that puked and then kept running. That's something that I have never faced and I don't want to. And I just have so much respect for the people that did that. I think the most respect came from just the not quitting part.
It was hard not quit. And I remember like listening to, I think, Jocko do an interview. And when it comes to Navy SEALs, they've suddenly like blew up. Like the media, like they have great marketing. And everyone like looks at Navy SEALs as like these elite warriors, as they are. But I don't think people realize the commitment and the dedication and the effort and the work that goes into being that. And I just remember going every week like, who wants this right now? Like, this is none of this was fun for me. But I remember talking to some people on the team and they like really enjoyed it. For you, was any of it fun at all?
My favorite part was after the working out. During the workouts, I found it very hard to enjoy it at all. But there was a moment that really stood out to me when we were doing the partner carries in the soft sand, and I was just miserable. And I look over, and one of the top guys is looking at me, and he's smiling, and I can tell from his face that he's loving it. He's having a good time, and I just couldn't believe that. That changed my perspective, and I always found it hard to enjoy things while in the middle of a challenge and in the middle of that much discomfort. But that's something I tried to work on at Team Eagle One, and it was those guys that made it stand out to me.
Did it change for you after that smile and that what was that perspective shift for you? Were you then smiling through the pain after that? Or
I was trying to. It definitely changed my perspective where I can have such a better attitude about this. I'm going to be doing it either way, so I might as well have some fun and see the positive in it.
For myself, I had weekly mantras that I'd be playing in my head, and I had a theme song in my head. So that way it would like power me to go through it, and I would smile. Like I always smile. For me, it was just the only way I could get myself to not quit. Did you have, I mean, you mentioned you counted and you were always focused on everybody else, but did you ever have a moment where you were like, I'm done, like I can't go anymore?
Yeah, there was one where Coach Mack had us doing half-mile sprints, and we were doing that on repeat. I think he told us that we were going to do 4 of those in a row, and I think we ended up doing 12. Towards the middle of that, I think I just hadn't eaten enough that morning, and I've been pushing myself every single time, and I got to the point where the last few hundred feet of every sprint towards the finish line, I would start losing my vision, and it got to the point where I couldn't see, like everything would just go white as I'd cross the finish line, and I like couldn't stand. After that, my pace dropped significantly, and the same thing happened. And then Coach Mack asked me if I was okay, and half my face was like not working. Like my one eye would open and close, but the other was like behind, and I just felt super off, and I couldn't stand up straight. And he had me sit out for one of those repeats that time. But that was a point where it's like, man, I'm reaching the limit.
Yeah, that would be terrifying for myself if I'm just seeing white. Were you dry? Were you wet? Were you on wet sand? Were you on dry sand?
This was on the concrete walkway that we were doing. I don't remember if we were wet and sandy or not. But yeah, even with the ease of running on the concrete compared to the soft sand, it was a challenge. The speed went up significantly, but the effort didn't decrease for many of us. So that was a hard day.
And then how did you get yourself to come back?
I don't know. It just kind of happened. I never got to the point where I was going to sit myself out. I just told myself, if it's going to happen, like coach is going to have to tell me to stop. When I didn't want to run anymore at that point, and I was having those difficulties, when he said, ready, go, I would just go. And I would be sensitive to my body and like how uncomfortable I was. And I would push myself past the point of discomfort, even if that point was half of my normal pace. Like I would just push to the same amount of effort because I just couldn't keep up the same speed with what my body was doing. My body was just telling me it wouldn't do anymore.
How do you push yourself past to the point of discomfort?
I always found it to be easy with the team, and I would always just focus on the people's discomfort around me, which is another tool that Coach Mack taught us, was just looking around and seeing how everyone else is going through the same thing, and then realizing that, you know, if they can do it, then I can do it. So that's pretty much always how I would push myself through the discomfort.
That's very impressive because that was always a big struggle for me, is getting through that discomfort. I did experience this, which I was shocked by, where you mentioned when you push yourself past that point of discomfort, like you're really, really uncomfortable, you're ready to quit, your body's about to shut down, your mind, you're fighting the whole entire time. And then at some point you just kind of break through a barrier once you get through that discomfort point, and it just gets easy. Like, because you hit that barrier where you just like push through your body and your mind. Did you experience that?
I personally haven't had any big like revelations where I just keep pushing, and then I find that I'm just able to do a lot more. I've only been able to find so far that I can keep going a lot further than I thought I could, but never to a point where it gets easy or I feel relief. I haven't pushed myself that hard, I guess.
I just had it one time where I was just like, oh my gosh, I understand what he's talking about. But to get through that discomfort, for me, it was always a challenge. I mean, physically, my body was shutting down the moment he said go. You mentioned you're in the program for 9 months in person. What made you stop?
I had a bunch of friends that weren't in the program anymore, and like they were what I thought of when I thought of Team Eagle One. So it was hard to keep putting out all of the effort of driving down because it basically took up the whole weekend. I'd leave Saturday afternoon, and then I'd park at a rest area, and I'd sleep in my car, and then I'd drive the next morning, and then I'd be driving home the entire day after Team Eagle One. So it was really hard to keep up that effort when the teammates that I had bonded with were gone. And then also the cost of gas up by Tahoe at that time. I think gas went up to like $8 a gallon.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it was just, I just couldn't afford driving that much every single weekend all the time. But I did continue remotely. I would be part of their Zoom calls, and I'd still work out at the same amount. Yeah, I did miss the Team Eagle One Sundays for sure.
I've been on many sports teams, and being on Team Eagle One is unlike anything I've ever experienced, because the bond that you form is unlike anything else. No matter, for me personally, like all the sports teams that I've been on, and even at the highest caliber team that I've been on, it's still nothing like Team Eagle One. And there is this bond there that I'm forever going to cherish. And do you still talk and stay in touch with people?
Yeah, I do. There are a number of people from Eagle One that I talk to, and there are a few of us that have been doing long distance runs. We just did a 50 miler down in Big Bear, and that was fun. That was a good challenge. But it's really cool to be around such a group of people that pushes themselves. I still haven't found another group like it, and it's just such a good feeling to be around people that I feel are just way better than myself. Yeah, talking about Eagle One and how good it was. There's some good people, and I'm so glad that I did it and met all those teammates.
You mentioned in the very beginning of this interview, you wanted to be a SEAL up in high school, and you weren't sure if it was ever possible, and then you joined Team Eagle One. So is that still something for you, or are you moving in a different direction?
So I'm not sure anymore. I was disqualified for color vision. I couldn't pass the color blindness test for the Navy. Have to be able to pass that for SEAL. So that was just not an option for me anymore. I'm not sure what my path is from here, what the future holds for me.
Gotcha. And what are you up to now in these days?
These days I do construction. I just built a new ski lift down at Mammoth. I spent all summer doing that. And then on the off season, when there's too much snow to work at the ski resort, I build police cars for my local county.
Wow, well, that's really cool. Wow, that's amazing. What lessons have you learned from Team Eagle One that has translated to making you a better person? I will remember one thing that Coach Mac said is you don't train this hard and not know who you are. What did you learn about yourself from when you started Team Eagle One? And is the person that joined Team Eagle One different than the person that started?
Definitely different than when I started Team Eagle One. I think the biggest difference is the perspective. Didn't think that the amount of effort and challenge that could be overcome was possible when I joined Eagle One. And now I just look at everything differently. I used to think that 1 mile runs were hard and that 3 mile runs were long. And I'll run now and those runs feel like warm-ups. Even the 3 mile one is like, oh, it's not a big deal. Another thing that I took away from Team Eagle One was, I forget what Coach Matt called it, but it was a tool where you wake up in the morning and you just do a self-assessment, where you are mentally, physically, spiritually, like where you are, and how you're feeling. And then from there, just do one thing, doing one more thing and doing the little things, like that you don't want to do. So if I'm not feeling good when I wake up in the morning, then I'll do some small tasks like clean the dishes and things like that. And that's something that I didn't have or never thought of before Team Eagle One, was just doing self-assessments. And I never realized how the little tasks that you don't want to do, like when you complete them, then you feel so much better. And that's led to so much more productivity on a day-to-day basis for me, just my normal life.
You mentioned during this interview that when you're training with yourself, it's easier for you to quit on yourself versus when you're with the team. Now, how do you feel like when it comes to doing the things that you might not want to do?
It does feel a lot different. Thinking back before Team Eagle One, I would quit on myself a lot. Like things would get hard. I'd be doing push-ups and I'd just think, man, this is really uncomfortable. I'll just stop doing push-ups for now and then go to a different exercise. But after Team Eagle One, I will be doing push-ups and I'll be conscious of my form, and I will give myself a set number of push-ups to do beforehand, before I start. And I don't let myself go away from that. Even if I fail and I'm not able to physically do the number I set myself, then I'll wait a minute and then I'll go back to the same thing until I finish what I said I would do. And that's something that helped a lot from Team Eagle One also.
And what about like the discipline of everyday things, like for yourself? Like for me, taking out the garbage, like doing laundry, like things that I didn't want to do suddenly then became just something that I just would do. Like just because you didn't want to do it, I didn't mean, like I would always procrastinate and do it. And then after joining Team Eagle One, it was like procrastination went out the window. For yourself, like who was Cole prior to Team Eagle One, and then who is Cole now?
Prior to Team Eagle One, I was definitely a procrastinator, big time. Like I would not want to do the dishes, so I would wait hours and hours and just feel dread of doing those. After Eagle One, I am much more prone to going straight to the thing that I don't want to do. Like if the dishes need to be done, then I'll do them like right then. Or a big thing too that Coach Mac taught us that I found useful was, if you're not able to do it right now, then put it on your schedule so that you know that you will do it and when you're going to do it. And that's helped a lot too, because before Team Eagle One, I was a lot less organized and forget about doing things. I'm much better at organizing, and if I'm not able to do something right away, then I'll schedule it and I'll actually get it done. So the things that I forget or they get past me are a lot less than before Team Eagle One.
The schedule has definitely helped me like immensely to just get myself. I was not a gym person prior to Team Eagle One at all. Now I'm a member at a gym and I regularly go, and I'm over 10 pounds of muscle and I'm going for 20 and it's still not fun for me like at all. But because I schedule it in, like you show up for yourself. And I think that was one of the big things that I learned about Team Eagle One is you show up for yourself. Like the fact that you go to do something so hard and your brain wants, like your mind is giving you every reason not to show up. You're nervous, your body. Then for me, like my body would get sick and like really get me to not want to go. And then, but you show up and you get through it. So it definitely helped me in terms of calendar showing up, especially like when you didn't want to do it. So what for you has changed in terms of any other lessons or anything that you have for our audience in terms of being that we're all mindset lessons from the field, like any other lessons from the field that you learned that the audience can really take away from this?
Well, about what you just said, the one thing that stands out is like for showing up to things. When I first started at Eagle One, I would show up to the gym, but I would sit in my car for like 30 minutes and just dread going in. Like talking about your mind finding excuses, I would be on my phone, like going through my emails, catching up on messages, like,
oh, I'm so glad I'm not alone. Yeah, 100%. That was me. Yeah.
yeah. And it took a lot of effort and exercising that discipline, but it did get easier after a while of like showing up, and I would want to check my phone. So I'd be like, okay, you have 5 minutes to check your phone. And then your phone is staying in the car and you're going to go work out.
That's speaking my language. Like, I mean, I would stare at the gym for like ever in my car. And I remember the first time I went to the gym was from doing Team Eagle One. Like, you have to go to the gym. Like, you're not going to improve each week, like without all the stuff that you have to put into it. And I remember like the first time I went to the gym, it took me like 4 hours because he had this crazy workout for you. And there had to be like 12 exercises on that list that he gave. And I didn't know any machine. I'm looking at my phone, trying to watch other people. I'm asking people, can you help? What does this machine do? I'm so confused. And it took me like 4 hours to get through it. And I started like when the gym opened at 5. And I remember like leaving at around 9. And I was just like, I can't keep doing this. But it did get easier. And I did stop just staring at the gym. And when I park my car, I just walk in. I know what I'm doing. It's just kind of on autopilot at this point. But I'm so glad I'm not the only one that like does that. Especially someone like you, who you were always in the front. Like I always admired that. I always was in awe and inspired by you in the front, putting out, and it was so impressive. It was always impressive watching you week after week after week. And I'm so grateful that you shared with me everything that you shared, because like Coach Max said, we're all going through it. And it seems like whether you're in the front and I'm in the back, or wherever we are in the whole entire workout, it's interesting to know that we kind of were going through the similar stuff of the nerves and the mindset and the, not eating and the discomfort and stuff like that. It's very comforting to know that someone else experienced very similar feelings as myself.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's comforting to know that you also felt that way, because when I was feeling all those feelings, I kind of just figured that I was the only one feeling it.
100%, especially when you're seeing like Alec every time. I'd never seen somebody like Spartan Warrior, like every time, like right in the front. And I'm like, does this person get tired? But then I remember like seeing a photo of him because he was in Team One for years or something. And the improvement in like the, from what I saw in the photos, the scrawny kid to now this like, Spartan Warrior, G.I. Joe. And like, and for you to just be there 1 month prior and always in the front, damn, it's impressive. And I always look to you and all the other guys that I bonded with on this team when I am struggling, or when things get hard and I need to push through the hard. I'm always looking back into Team Eagle One to get that courage to just push through it. Do you experience that as well?
I do, yeah. If I'm doing something physically difficult, I'll think back to Eagle One, and I still have a feeling like I just don't want to let them down, that those guys would do it. So I should do it too.
It's crazy on the impact this program had on my life and had on me as a person. Like, the person that joined day one is not the same person today. And the bond that we all shared from this, it's a pretty special program. It's a really special program that he put together. And I'm honored that you joined me today to talk about this program and your experience on Team Eagle One. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I'm honored that you had me. Thank you so much for bringing me on and having me on your podcast. It's been cool to see what you've been up to.
You're very inspiring, and thank you for everything and being here. And everyone that's listening right now, please go like, share, comment, give a subscribe. Tune in next week for our next episode. Thank you, guys.